What's going on, gurus? My name is Nick, and I am back here today to discuss threat sources. And what I mean by threat sources isn't the ones that we see here, it's all of the other ones that we've got out there. These ones are fairly simple. These are built into the platform. You flick the switch on. If it requires an API key, it's going to pop up and ask you for that API key just as such. You enter that API key in, and then you're able to use that threat source on any of those artifacts. But what I'm talking about is all of the integrations that we have out here. We've got all of these great integrations out there. We've got different vendors that are collecting data for us that we could have an integration with. We have different open source tools that also could be integrated into the product. We have tools that you could be running on-prem that maybe you want to get some additional information for. We've got things like Joe Sandbox who can take files and actually get further information on that file, on those hashes that we're seeing in there, and actually do some processing that is not going to be in our threat source list. But we want to treat it as such because we want to take those threat sources, we want to identify them as hits, and we want to apply them onto those artifacts as a hit as well, so that our analysts can clearly see that there's a hit on this artifact. They can dive in, they can see the report and the information that is in that artifact, and then they can actually click into it and go to that permalink where the official document or the official report of that vendor will have that information. So how do we go about doing that? Well, first things first, let's go ahead and download any of the apps that you want to use to be able to do that integration. Of all of the integrations that I've got on my server, let's go ahead and jump into the URL scan. It's one that's not in our threat sources, but it is an integration that we can download and install and actually use the function to get additional information on things like IPs, domains, URLs, that kind of thing. This is the one I'll be using for my demonstration today, but you can do everything that I'm showing with any of the integrations that are bringing back any kind of threat intel for you. As you can see here, I've already gone ahead and grabbed this. I have installed it and configured it. I've added my API key in here so that I can use this. And now we've gone ahead and deployed it. So let's go ahead and see how we would actually use the integration to add hits to our artifacts. All right, here I've already got this playbook. This playbook is available out on the GitHub as well. I will go ahead and link that down below. But what we're going to do is we are going to open this up here where we'll be able to see how this playbook is going to work. We're just going to do a very simple playbook here. It is going to call the function. It is then going to gather those results and use a script to determine if something needs to be written to the artifact or not as a hit. All right, so let's dive into this a little bit. Of course, to begin, I created this artifact, or I created this playbook to automatically run on a artifact, and I also have it set so that this is going to be looking specifically for a URL here. Then, of course, I'm waiting for that artifact to be created. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop the function in here. The function is going to have a fairly simple script here that is going to be run. Basically, we're just passing it the incident ID. We're passing it that we don't care that this is a public scan. Of course, if you're going to run private scans because you've got a private API or something like that, you can do that as well. And then last but not least, we are also going to run the URL scan URL as the artifact's value. After we do that, we're going to output it to our URL scan output. And then once we get the data back from this, we're going to use this script to actually parse this out. Now, this script I got from one of my coworkers here. My coworker actually built this into a workflow. I converted this into a playbook and made it available to you guys. So let's go ahead and jump into this script. All right, here in the script, you can see that the first thing I'm doing is I am turning the results variable into the results that we gathered back from that URL scan. From there, we're going to be doing some parsing here. I'm not going to go over all that parsing, but what we're going to want to focus on here is the hit itself. So what we're doing here is we're actually defining the hit variable that we are later going to apply to the artifact. Then what this is actually going to consist of is a list of dictionaries, as you can see here. Those dictionaries, what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be defining three variables. First is going to be the name variable. So we put in the name key, and then of course the value of that key is just going to be whatever we want to name that this value that we're posting as a hit. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to define the type. So the type for this one is going to be string. You can see we've got number here. I think we've got URI down here. If you're looking for what types are accepted, I'll post this down below as well, but we're going to go to the artifact operations. The artifact operations, we're going to look at the add hit, where here it's going to define the specific types that we can use, which is going to be a string, which we saw, a number, which we saw, a URI, which we also saw, and the last two would be an IP or a lat and longitude. This will give us the ability to post those kinds of information as part of our hits so that we can further expand on the information that we're providing. All right, of course, as we define those, now we can go ahead and define the last thing, which is the value. The value can be, again, this is self-defined. This can be anything from a number, for instance here, or we can have a string. That string could consist of all kinds of information, including lots of detail if we want to include that. And then, of course, last but not least, we can actually add a URI. So if we wanted to, we could actually define a report link so that that report link could lead that analyst to a link to the official report, whatever that is. So for this instance, it would actually take us back to URL scan so that URL scan can show their actual details that they collected and gathered off. After we've gone ahead and defined that list, then what we're going to do is take that entire list that we defined here, and we're actually going to apply it back to the artifact using the artifact.addHit. Then, of course, what we're going to do is we're going to put a name at the top of that, or at the beginning of that, and then followed by a comma and the hit list. Now, when we put that name in there, if we go into an incident, then what we're going to see when we actually see a hit is a description of the threat source that we actually identified. So if I go into my artifacts here, you can see here in our list, we have a hit, we have a threat source name. This is that name that I'm referring to. So whatever you are applying to that beginning name is what's going to be applied here in that comma separated list here. And then, of course, once we actually go into the artifact, then what we're going to see is the actual hit that was added. And we can click on that, see all of our information. If we added a lot of information, we can see that all over here. And then, of course, if we added one of those links, you'll be able to see that virus total report here for this link, or of course, URL scan or whichever vendor you're using for that. All right. So now that we've gone through all that, that is what the script is going to be doing. It's going to be giving us that information, or of course, we're going to be sending a log that there was no result information found. If we wanted to, we could potentially output that to a note instead. I can tell you that if we start looking at some of the other content packs that are out there that are doing similar things, such as this virus total content pack that's out there, it will actually write a note to the incident letting you know that nothing was found in the virus total scan that it ran. So with all that said, now we were able to show how you can use some of the integrations that we have out here to actually act as their own threat sources. So you don't have to just use the threat sources that we have internally within our platform here. If you have your own integrations, or if you have integrations with other threat sources from our App Exchange or from your own personal development, you can actually use those to apply those threat source feeds and those threat source hits to your artifacts. I hope this content has been beneficial for all of you out there who are trying to build out your SOAR platforms. We are always looking for new ways that we can add new content to the YouTube channel here. And so if you guys have any suggestions, please drop those down below. If you guys liked the video, please give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give us a thumbs down and tell us why you didn't like it in the notes down below too. It's always going to help us grow and get better at making sure that you guys have the content you need to continue to develop and improve your source systems and environments. And with that said, I hope to see you gurus next time.